This is the DTV Digest, the podcast that brings you news and reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema. And now, here's your host, Mike Parkin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DTV Digest. I'm your host, Mike Parkin, and joining me, as usual, are Richard Hawes.
Hello, everybody.
And Stephen Lockridge.
Hello.
This week, we've got 7 films that we're going to be covering. We're kicking off with A Small Fortune. Then moving on to Craving, Hell's Half Acre, and Space Wars Quest for the Deepstar. Then we have What Remains. After this, Will Bentley will be joining me to talk about Pillow Party Massacre. Our short shot is Happy Mart, and our DTV throwback is the Zoe Bell film Raise. So without further ado, let's crack on. Our first film then is A Small Fortune. When a desperate man finds a bag of lost money off the shores of Prince Edward Island, his decision to keep it secret turns his quaint fishing village into a growing crime scene. We've seen this type of film a lot, guys. I believe, off the top of my head, we got A Simple Plan. I'm pretty sure there's one we covered recently, which is sort of smacked with this sort of story. And I was also reminded of the film The Walk, which was the film set in Boston, because we have a lot of people sort of wrangling with this Prince Edward Island accent, which is, makes some of the dialogue quite interesting to try and decipher. Steve, did you see this one?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a bargain basement, No Country for Old Men, in a way.
Yeah, that was the other one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. It was all right. It was nicely shot. I thought the actual location worked really well.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it is a bit generic. It's, finds the money, criminals come, find it, and it all goes tits up. I thought some of the characters are interesting, especially is it Omar? I think it was called.
Yeah, the guy with the big bushy beard.
Yeah. He was quite interesting.
I don't think he was a professional actor though. I think he's.
Oh no! Yeah. I don't think he was either. He's actually passed away.
All right. Well, that's a shame.
Yeah. When was this actually made then? Because he passed away like 3 years ago.
Really?
He was a professional actor. I just
okay.
We'll just mention that.
Being really, really disparaging of his career. That's not great. Yeah. So it is. It does take a while to sort of get going.
Yeah.
But as soon as that scuzzy guy with the neck tattoos turns up, it does sort of start turning up the heat a bit. So yeah, it was an interesting film overall, and the way these guys operate is pretty nasty for a start. There's and also this interesting sort of dynamic between the sheriff and his new deputy, who's I mean, oh god, there's clearly no HR on the island, in that department. Because he doesn't make it a very hospitable environment for her, that's for sure.
She obviously, trying to be by the book and everything like that. It's a bit like Hot Buzz in a way, They know how to deal with it better than that, but yeah, it was okay. I've seen it done better. I've seen it done worse. So.
Yeah. Rich, did you see this one?
Yes, I did, and I think like you are. I thought it took a while to get going, sort of set up, sort of bed yourself into the environment that you're in, because it's a really kind of interesting setup of essentially the guy's making a living taking a horse and cart basically into the water and dragging up moss.
Yeah.
And that's how he's making his money, is he's selling on the moss, and they use it for feed and stuff like that, which I've not come across anything like that before. But he's making, practically nothing from it, and in part because he's not as good as his predecessors. So there's that going on. He's struggling to make a go of the life that was passed down to him, basically. And he sort of feels like he's failing a bit in that.
Because we see at the beginning that we get this sort of old sort of cine footage, sort of cine camera footage, where you can see that this moss gathering thing was like a booming trade for in a particular period. Now it's literally just him, sort of trying to make a living out of it.
Yeah, and how much it's like time has stood still to a certain extent. I mean, there were certain elements of this which reminded me of a film called Leviathan, which was also in a sort of a desolate sort of area and stuff. But then, it kicks in. It does sort of start to warm up and kick into gear after around 20 minutes or so. It's only an hour and a half movie, so it doesn't outstay its welcome. But it is, like as you say, it's quite a well-worn story. Very Coen brothers at times, especially as you say, the police sort of presence. I was specifically, I really liked Sheriff Bradley, because initially he comes along and he's kind of messing with the new recruiters, trying to hand out some tickets or whatever, and he's saying basically just leave it alone, he's let it go kind of thing. And it seemed you initially you're not on his side, because you think he's messing with her and she seems like she's doing the right thing. But then as the story unfolds, you realize that he really, although he's abrasive, he does kind of understand the environment that he's working in and the people, and actually the people do kind of mobilize without any real encouragement to sort of help to their own sort of detriment in some cases as it unfolds, because they don't have reinforcements or whatever to call upon. The thriller aspect really kicks in. I did enjoy it, although I say, as you say, we have seen that whole found a bag of money kind of dilemma kind of thing a million times before. A simple plan was for me also one that really sort of jumped into my mind.
Yeah, there's
very much a Bill Paxton-y kind of thing.
There's something we did last year which had Simon Phillips in it. And it was literally the sheriff, who was a woman, sort of going from place to place, sort of tracing the steps backwards. Basically.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was a weird one. Yeah.
Was it like Rust and Bone or something?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, something along those sort of lines. Yeah. Okay, so scoring this one, Steve?
I'll give this 6.
I'm between a 6 and a 7, I must admit. But I think I'm going to go for a 6 on this one. And Rich?
I was very engrossed. I really, really liked it a lot. After, once it kicked into gear, so I'm going to give it an 8.
All right. Okay. I did like those two punky girls on the quad bikes. Who just did not give two fucks about anything,
No parent in sight at all.
No. This you got that guy, with the neck tattoos and the gun and everything turns up, and they're like, "What the fuck are you looking at?" Yeah. Plus, okay, so that's 2 6s and an 8 for A Small Fortune. Go check it out. Our next review is Craving. The late-night patrons of a roadhouse are held hostage by a group of drug addicts. Meanwhile, a group of mysterious masked figures barricade them inside, and as withdrawal starts to set in, a secret one of them is carrying threatens to destroy them all. This is, it's a low-budget film, Steve. It is, it has similarities, especially because of the setting, with a film called Feast that we reviewed on the throwbacks not too long ago. My main issue with this film, and I do like a lot of elements in this. I do have one problem with it though, and that is it starts not in media res, but it does start at the end and sort of jumps back. So, but it's like an epilogue but at the beginning. So the film starts with these two cops coming in and seeing all the carnage and everything that's happened and find a survivor. And then we sort of jump back to the night before and what happens. My problem is that the film seems to forget its initial setup because it never goes back to it.
No.
It never goes back to the fact, it gives itself a completely different ending to what they had initially set up, which is weird. It's like, oh shit, we forgot to do that bit. Oh well, hopefully nobody will notice, but it's one of those things. Some of the reaction shots are dreadful, considering what's going on screen. People look bored just looking at it. But I did like the concept. I did like the structure of it with the flashbacks and things to sort of try and fill in. There are still big gaps as to what was really going on and stuff. And I did like the idea of these guys withdrawing from their drug addictions, but one of them could be withdrawing from their blood addiction, shall we say. But again, that's something which gets lost later on, because what comes out of the film is just killing everyone. It's not feeding on anyone, so it's not really sort of sating any craving. It seems like they've forgotten about that bit again. It's like, we've got a creature which is like killing everyone. It's great. But the whole point of the film is he's turned into this creature because he's craving for something. It seems to have been, I don't know, a bit lost in translation. How do you feel about this one?
It wasn't for me, I'll be honest. I mean, I don't like.
You're not a blood and guts guy, yeah.
No, I'm not. And to be fair, the first half, I thought, well, kind of get it. I mean, the acting was terrible. I'll be brutally honest. I mean, the girl in the blue top was just awful. She couldn't act her way out of a paper bag. I'm sorry, but every line was just dreadful. And then it's kind of well shot. It's not. You can tell there's obviously hardly any budget there, and then it gets to the midway point where it turns. It just does like a From Dusk Till Dawn, basically. And that's kind of when it went downhill for me. It kind of came out of nowhere, really. I mean, there's people say, oh, he's a monster and he's a monster and all that stuff and kind of thing. And then, but that's the only thing. There's no back up to it. You know what I mean? It just goes from 0 to 0, from 0 to 100 in like 20 seconds. And then that was when it lost me, to be fair. I mean, even the credits are doing it as well, I think I only made it halfway through the credits before I turned off, to be fair, because it was just the same thing over and over again. So I know some people will like it, but it's not for me.
The gore stuff, I'm sure people will get into, but it's they've got the concept, but they just don't follow through with it. With all the flashbacks and stuff, it was looking pretty cool. And it was all, gelling together. And then it's like, well, you've forgotten the whole idea of what you're actually driving at here. Which was annoying, unfortunately. So, okay. So on that note, Steve, how are you going to score Craving?
I'll give it a 5.
All right. I'm going to be a bit more generous. I'll give it a 6. It didn't outstay its welcome. I did like a lot of it. But it's just those inconsistencies in the script that didn't, I mean, I'm not one to sort of really pick holes with pick holes in plots and things. Usually a lot of this stuff just goes way over my head, but unfortunately this was too glaring for me to overlook, even for me. So there you go. So it's a 5 and a 6 for Craving. Go check it out. Our next review is Hell's Half Acre. A team of YouTubers who film themselves exploring abandoned buildings find themselves in a long disused prison where, much to their horror, they discover some of the inmates haven't completely left. Guys, we covered a film a couple of years ago, at least a year ago, called Paranormal Prison, which we covered in episode 175. That was a really good version of this, where it was a group of people who are actually paranormal investigators doing their YouTube video, setting up all their equipment and that sort of thing, and filming stuff that was going on. This has similar ideas, but instead of actually being, with the paranormal equipment and stuff, these are just guys who go to abandoned buildings. In fact, there was another film we did, we covered not so long ago, about a guy who meets up with his childhood best friend for his birthday, and it turns out he's sold his soul to the devil or something. And he's doing a similar sort of thing, one of these videos.
Yeah.
You remember which one? Yeah.
I can't remember, but I remember it.
But there you go. Anyway, this has some good ideas. It's got a brilliant twist about 3/4 of the way in that they pull out. But it's some of the acting that lets it down, and it's the possessed or the sort of demonic convict guys, the way they act. It's almost like they're trying to ape like Predator without the Predator makeup. The way they sort of spread their arms and sort of like, they sort of bare their teeth and stuff like this. And I just think, they need to sort of spend more time thinking about how they're going to approach this sort of thing a bit. It's just too, it's nowhere near scary. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay. There are some good ideas in here, that's for sure, and it is mostly well shot. I did enjoy watching it, probably because of the familiarity with it, with the previous one, the Paranormal Prison one. But the other good thing about this is that there are a couple of survivors get out the other end. A lot of people die in the film. A couple do actually sort of manage to get out, and there is a good sort of 5 minutes of screen time of them, full of remorse and sort of being hit with guilt about what happened, and can they believe it? How do they tell people what happened? And all this sort of stuff. I thought that was it was quite a good sort of moment of pathos for the film, and it's something that a lot of films just do not do. They would probably cut that 5 minutes out. So I was sort of quite impressed with that. But if I was to compare it with Paranormal Prison, which there are so many similarities sort of between, it could even be the same location they used. I would go with the former over this, but even so, I'd give this a 6 out of 10. Our next review is Space Wars: Quest for the Deep Star. Space explorer Kip and his daughter find themselves on the run from bounty hunters, while at the same time searching for the long-lost starship Deep Star, which is rumored to be full of treasure. We covered a film a couple of weeks ago, Steve, called Colonials.
Yes.
Which was, it had ambitious special effects and an absolutely terrible story.
Yeah.
This one has a similar look to it, and some of the effects in this are actually pretty decent. There are some really ropey stuff in there as well, but I think there are some really good bits in this. But I found this to be a lot more enjoyable. It was a lot more enjoyable watching this. The acting was better. The characterization was there. There's a bit of background to it all, and I didn't feel it was leaning too heavily into any sort of well-known franchises. So yeah, I must admit I did like this one a lot. How did you get on with it?
I really enjoyed it, to be fair. like you said, some of the effects are a little bit ropey, but when I was watching it, I wasn't. In my own head, I was comparing it to Colonials. To be fair, with the obviously lack of budget and stuff like that, but it's actually got a decent script that works, makes sense, and it's fun.
Yeah,
to me. That was the thing that I just found it enjoyable, and it was, some of the acting is a bit ropey, but to be fair, like Michael Pare and even Olivier Gruner, I thought they're actually pretty decent in it, and the girl who plays his daughter, Sarah French, I thought she was really good.
She was good, yeah. There was one bit that did make me laugh. Did make me chuckle was Michael Pare's character. He steals this coin or something off this this crime lord woman.
Yeah.
And she's like, "That was my sister's favorite, most prized possession or something." And he's like, "What happened to his sister?" And he goes, "Well, I shot her." Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I liked.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is good. Yeah, solid.
Even the like the twist at the end, where he turns into a bastard and stuff like that, and after stringing her along and stuff. Even the bit in the cave I thought was quite good as well.
Yeah,
where they find out what it actually is and stuff, and it's just fun. It's not too taxing. It's not too serious. It's just it does what it says on the tin. Is all I can say. You get what you expect with it, but it does it well.
Absolutely, and as you say, you're not confused. You're not sort of screaming at the characters like, "Why are you doing this stupid thing?" Yeah, which is what we were doing with Colonials.
Yeah.
This is a lot more fun. It's got a bit of heart to it. And it's hopefully you get more adventures of Kip and his daughter and the other person they picked up along the way. So yeah, a solid one, this one. How are you going to score it?
I'll give it a 7 or 8. I'm not sure. I'll go 8.
All right. Yeah, why not? I was going to say it's at least worth a 7. This it is one of the fun ones. So yeah, let's give it an 8. So 2 8s for Space Wars: Quest for the Deep Star. Go check it out. Our next review is What Remains. A small-town pastor is forced to reckon with an act of forgiveness when the convict he forgave for murdering his wife returns to town 5 years later. Meanwhile, the town sheriff investigates another murder that may be related. That other sheriff is played by Anne Heche, who made this film about 4 months before she died, apparently, or it came out 4 months after she died. One of the two. Unfortunately, she doesn't get a lot to do in this. The focus is on Kellan Lutz mainly as the convict. We never actually we learn very late in the film the circumstances of him killing the pastor's wife. So the pastor is called Marshall. He's played by Cress Williams. Very good performance. We get this bit at the beginning where he does his eulogy for his wife's funeral. It's really well done. Kellan Lutz, he plays this sort of typical James Dean style drifter, loner kind of guy, just out of prison, back in his hometown. He was sensibly there to sort of try and look after his mum. But he needs a job for his parole and this sort of stuff, so the pastor helps him out. Trouble is, the pastor's son, who's about to go to college, absolutely hates the idea and all this. There's a lot of conflict between the two. Meanwhile, Anne Heche's character is the sheriff. We see her at the beginning investigating a murder. There's a truck which has been set on fire, which is close by to a field, and there's a body inside. And she's doing all her sort of crime scene investigation stuff. There was another vehicle here, tire tracks and all this sort of stuff. And as the IMDb synopsis suggests, that's going to tie into the main plot. It never does. We never hear anything about that again. There are some very strange directorial, visual choices in this film. There's a whole sequence where there's a split screen when there is absolutely no need for a split screen. So on the left-hand side, we've got the pastor's son talking. On the right-hand side, we're looking at, the island in the middle of the kitchen, and nothing's on it. It is very, very bizarre. Why they've done it this way. So things come to a head eventually, and somebody makes a very rash decision, a very fatal decision, and there's somebody else tries to cover it up. Basically, it's a bit hallmarky, shall we say? It's very sort of TV movie of the week. The way it's sort of filmed, it's kind of very flat. It's almost like everyone's being filmed in front of a wall, or in a very sort of confined space. It looks very strange. And then it just ends without any sort of any wrap up or anything. It just sort of basically peters out and goes, that'll do, I guess. It's a very strange film. Unfortunately, there's another film released this year called What Remains with Stellan Skarsgård, and I was kind of hoping it was this one. That was the one that we're actually going to be reviewing, but no, we end up with this thing. But anyway, I'm giving this a 5 out of 10. So if that floats your boat, Kellan Lutz, looking a bit rugged, go check it out. Our next review is Pillow Party Massacre. 5 girls, all best friends, all haunted by their past mistakes of an April Fool's prank gone fatally wrong, meet again after 2 years for a summer break getaway in the woods to reconnect and reconcile. I'm joined by Will Bentley for this one. Hi, Will.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. So this is a film which wears its influences very much on its sleeve. It practically tattooed on its forearm for all to see. The filmmakers are obviously fans of like the 80s slasher genre, as probably the Scream movies as well, for good measure. But certainly this is sort of veering towards the the 80s heyday, I'd say. Right from the beginning, we got that sort of, the high school dance scene, and the music is really evocative of like the sort of electronic sort of 80s sound, sort of flock of seagulls, that sort of thing. So it gets you sort of right in that sort of vibe straight away.
Yeah, I mean, from the start, it was the prom, wasn't it? It was like
I think so. Yeah,
prom, and then it was like I thought it was the Cure at first. I don't think it was. Like the music, and it was this kind of really kind of slow motion kids dancing in a high school gym or hall that's been done up for the April Fools. Yeah, that's right, because it's spring.
It's an April Fool's dance. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's set on April 1st. That particular bit. Yeah.
And then the music was like, I mean, it was pretty good actually. But it was just sort of it was really weird because you're watching it thinking, is it? I mean, it's not set in the 80s, but it was kind of riffing heavily all the way through on like 80s music. I mean, and that kind of synth pop way on vocal stuff. That was the music that they kind of went for all the way through. I think it's pretty neat. It set the scene for me pretty well for all the kind of slasher horrors I'd watched at that during that time.
Absolutely. Then we get the sort of like the inciting incident, which is this sort of pretty mean April Fool's joke. It's a shame we didn't get to know the character a bit better, because all her friends are sort of sure that she's done much worse than this, but it's all after the event, it's like, she can't take a joke, all the rest of it. it's a shame we didn't learn a bit more about her before it happened to give it a bit more context, But it's a case of, she thinks they've gone way overboard. I think they went way overboard, to be quite honest, and she takes it out on a particular person. I was quite impressed with that, actually. How quickly things sort of went south there.
Yeah, and that was kind of I mean, it was quite shocking, actually, like what happened, because I mean, it's kind of a carry setup, isn't it? Basically, it's, the first thing I thought of, which was another classic 80s. This the original Sissy Spacek. And it was pretty much, it was that condensed into about sort of 10 minutes. Except she just she really goes off the deep end.
Absolutely, yeah.
With her revenge, because it was weird how, like, when they pull the prank and stuff, and then they're all like, "Oh no, she'll be fine."
Yeah.
This is right up her street, kind of thing. And it wasn't like it wasn't done to kind of totally destroy her, but it
wasn't sort of like a real mean-spirited, like, like Carrier. It's like, yeah, we're going to destroy this girl sort of thing. It's like we're just taking the piss out of one of our friends, it's like drawing a mustache on somebody when they fall asleep at a party or something like that. That's how they saw it. But obviously she felt a lot deeper for this character than they possibly realized. So so things went south pretty quick. Then we sort of jumped forward a couple of years, and this group have all split up and doing their own thing now, all graduated from high school. Some of them got to college, all at college and things like that. And they get, some of them are getting together for this sort of summer break getaway. And I think it's so the main character is it Sam? Yes, Laura Welsh plays the main, sort of, the central character that we're sort of following. And I think it's her sister, isn't it? It sort of convinces her that she should go to this thing, and everyone's sort of happy. But it's not long before we realise that somebody's out to do them in. The sort of the person who's the apartment they're sort of staying in, or the lodge they're staying in, she's done away with quite quickly by some masked figure. Again, her sort of kill scene was actually sort of quite reminiscent of Lucio Fulci. It sort of like references a couple of things, because the eyeball popping out is one, lots of eyeball stuff in Fulci's films, but also the knife to the back of the head is sort of the original kill from House by the Cemetery. Oh, God, the things I know.
Give me an example of Fulci.
Fulci.
Okay, might not know.
Well, The Beyond is one of his absolute classics, also known as The Gates of Hell, I believe. Zombie Flesh Eaters is probably the most famous one, which features a zombie versus shark, and a woman having her face or her eye impaled on a splinter of wood is sort of the other classic bit. All sorts like that. Yeah, The Beyond features a great scene where a guy's sort of looking for a book in a library, falls off the ladder, and is attacked by tarantulas who eat his face.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's amazing. It really is. But yeah, so as I said, the filmmakers are definitely sort of pandering to its audience, I think. Letting people know exactly where they stand on this sort of thing. One thing I did like about the script, actually, is the element of remorse and the guilt they feel. I mean, obviously you got things like I Know What You Did Last Summer, but I kind of felt this one dealt with it a bit better, because they at one point they get very sort of confrontational with each other and really in their face about either ignore, it's like the elephant in the room, and some of them are doing their best to ignore it, some of them are trying to be really glib about it, but But there is a moment where Sam sort of sits down with one of the other girls, and she's like, "Yeah, I didn't really want to mention it, but really miss having her around," sort of thing, And yeah, she said, "Oh, thank God, thank God somebody said it." Yeah.
I actually thought, I mean, I wasn't 100% sure. Like the setup for that was she's talking with her brother, who, it was basically the most, because I was watching it thinking I didn't know who he was sort of when she walked in and started talking, and he was just coming out with the most abrasive, cynical, snarky, and I was like, Jesus, this guy doesn't give a toss. But it was quite because he's sort of having a go at her for her state of grief basically.
Yeah.
But then gradually you realise that that's just the way they communicate, and that there was quite a lot of kind of honesty and communication and openness, which I mean, it's not. I'll be 100% honest. It's not the smoothest script.
True. Yeah.
Like in terms of like how the dialogue meshes together when people are talking. But I think to be honest with you, that's not the problem. That's not the script or the actors necessarily. It's perhaps a slightly unforgiving way of editing, or way of directing it. There's quite a lot of long dialogue scenes and stuff.
True.
But I actually thought it worked really well. And it showed, and then obviously it kind of that prompted her to to actually go off and do this, go and meet all your friends, even though it's quite hard and you're quite messed up and you clearly haven't dealt with it and you're not sure it's a good idea. And then she goes there, and then that scene you're talking about, she's like wanting to confront it, and the rest of them, she has that moment with the one girl in the room, and then when she tries to sort of bring it up, it goes as badly as you kind of know it's going to, because the rest of them have already expressed that they can't and really aren't able to talk about it. And I actually thought for a film like this, that was done really well.
I thought so. Yeah, and it leads into the sort of the title of the film kind of thing, because it's suddenly we get this big sort of pillow fight between them. I thought that was a good sort of moment of catharsis for them.
It was, because
done
to be
really
honest,
well.
it was it was done really well, because like, but I'm sat there thinking, Jesus, this is like the most kind of sledgehammer segue from genuinely sort of deep, heartfelt emotions into this really exploitative scene where they're all kind of like, it's another slow motion 80s synth pop, 4 beautiful girls having a pillow fight, and you're thinking that, well, actually they managed to get from that sort of quite mawkish scene into this. This all works really. Actually,
it was a good segue. Yeah.
And it was necessary, because it wasn't the film couldn't and wasn't going to be about, it wasn't a downer, at all. It is still at heart a slasher movie. It's just actually dealt with the reality of like slasher. That's the weird thing about this film. I thought it was like definitely 2 films in one, because it actually dealt with real world moments. Yeah. Really, really rather well. And then it had these kind of the pillow fight scene, which was just like, what the hell was that? But it was like really good. And then the slashing, then the actual slashing, which was like, bloody hell.
This isn't a parody. It's, with the title like Party Massacre, you may be led to believe it's going to be, a parody like Scary Movie or something like that. It's not. It is a straight up sort of slasher movie. I think the difference is, this does lean a bit towards Scream in that its characters are sort of self-aware. They know the sort, the setup they're in, sort of like not abandoned, but sort of isolated location, and there's an escaped loony on the loose. A couple of them comment like, "Oh Christ, we're in a bloody horror movie," sort of thing.
I've seen this one.
which is quite good, because when I think the lights go out at some point, the first thing is that, like, we got to get out of here. We got to phone the police. We got to, it's like that. It's not like, oh, I wonder what's going on. It's like, no, they know. They know exactly what's going on, and they got it, and they react to it, which is great. It's actually quite refreshing. I do have an issue though, I'm not going to reveal who the killer is or what their motive is, but the motive doesn't fit the carnage.
No.
Because the motive is very specific to the people in the house.
Yeah.
And yet a whole load of other people die.
I was going to say a bunch of other people get wasted along the way that had absolutely nothing to do
with it. Just wrong place, wrong time sort of thing. And even then, they didn't necessarily have to, it's not as if they spot the killer and go, I wonder who that stranger is or anything like that. It's having said that, sort of one of those, he's probably the most brutal and shocking kill of the film. Sort of two people outside of the house is all I'm going to say, who find an abandoned car. That was actually really shocking, that moment. It's like, bloody hell, that's not the way I thought that was going to go down.
And shocking, and also like a little, just genuinely surprising. It's kind of like,
yeah, exactly.
Bordering on the supernatural, that one. It was really quite unbelievable.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing as well, because geography gets in the way of the plot towards the end, because the people, the remaining people, sort of manage to split up and run for it, or at least a couple of them manage to get out of the house and run to the hills, and yet the killer still manages to find them and then go back to the house. Yeah. And it was at that point I'm thinking, are there two killers? Is this going down screen to, is this really going the screen route or something like that? But no, we're still stuck with one killer. But I think, possibly a continuity thing going on there, But if you can forgive that, then I think this is a solid, it's a love letter to the 80s slashers, I think. Basically.
And done with with some real guts.
Yeah, it does get nice and bloody at times. Yeah,
it really does. Yeah, and just it is like a definite. It is a homage to like the sort of classic 80s horrors.
But there's another one. Here's another obscure one. The final girl to die, with the box cutter, which is quite grim. That in itself was a reference to a film called House by the Edge of the Park, which was it was directed by Ruggero Deodato, who also did Cannibal Holocaust, and it was quite a famous film because the main sort of bad guy, and that was a guy called David Hess, who was also in Last House on the Left. It's so there's all these sort of little references going on there.
I was going to say, even the name of that film sounds like a direct sort of tribute to Last House on the Left, isn't it?
It was definitely sort of like heavily referencing that, and a similarly nasty film as well.
I'm struggling here because I didn't. I don't even know if we can. You don't want to do spoilers, but like, character known in the cast only as Trash Can Man in the beginning. Was that a complete sort of red herring?
Yeah, I think so.
Because there's something that happened in that encounter that, like, for the life of me, I don't think they circled back round to it.
No, I don't think they did.
Which is just an odd one. But anyway, I don't want to say any more because obviously, like, we don't like spoilers on the.
We try to avoid them. Yeah, but this is, it's. I think it's lacking a bit of budget. The cast are all unknown. That sort of is a little bit in his favor, I guess, because you don't know, no one's pulling any star power to survive the film.
Everyone's working. Everyone is definitely singing for their supper in this. Everyone is working.
Definitely. Everyone's working really well. The location's very good. The house that they use, and make good use of that. So yeah, it's a solid film. I enjoyed it a lot, I must admit. So yeah, how about yourself?
Yeah, me too, definitely. I'd go along with, and it's an odd one because, like what you're saying about, it could do with a bit more budget. Like there's not very many bits where you find yourself thinking that, because everything is solidly shot in this, and they make use of mystery and darkness in terms of the actual slasher bits. They don't kind of overplay their hand, so the effects they're not shown up for being weak or under budget at all. What they did in terms of physical effects and stuff and lighting and camera, it's all good. I think it shows up if you look at it overall, just in the sense that there is hardly any. There's a couple of interior locations. After the prom at the start, there's like basically 2 houses, and the rest of it is kind of outside and stuff. But like,
yeah, that's right.
They, in terms of set dressing, in terms of like getting the making the scenery work for them, they did really well. Oh, and there's even a couple of drone shots in there that should please you.
That's right. Yeah, I don't mind drone shots. It's drones. It's films that think drones are cool. I don't mind drone shots. Overhead shots, that sort of thing. But it does help the production value. But there was a whole series of like Steven Seagal movies and shit. Where they really thought drones were the shit, and there'd be whole scenes of someone standing stock still flying a drone. It's dreadful.
It's a bit weak. No, but I mean, they used them. It's made low budget filmmaking. It's given it sort of whole new dimensions, and they didn't overuse it in this, but they used a couple of nice shots of over the highways and things like that, which were just slick, and it just added to the, like you say, just adds to the production. Like I said, made use of the scenery. But it's not going to lie. I mean, there are bits in it where, like I said, there were bits where I thought the script was really sensitively done and really sensibly done. But then there's bits where you just think there's also bits where you're thinking that slow motion scene didn't need to last that long, and that dialogue is good. Why is it not pasted together a bit more kindly than it is? Do you know what I mean? Why is it there was bits where it was just a bit jerky, and I don't think at all it was to do with the acting and direction. It was just to do with they could have stitched it together a little bit more smoothly. But that's it, because actually there was some really great production values in this film for how much it probably didn't cost them.
I think that slow-mo dance scene at the beginning. I think if they'd managed to get a few more extras in that scene, it did look a bit sparsely attended. I mean, they're doing their best to sort of look at to make up for it. But I think if they'd managed to fill that hall or something like that, that would have helped. But there you go.
Definitely. Because you could kind of see it in that. And it's all that thing of having people dancing in a,
it must be hard. It really, because obviously they don't have the music. What I mean? I've seen behind the scenes footage of other films where they got like big nightclub scene, and all it is just a load of people stomping around, and then the music's added afterwards. It's like, it must be so difficult to actually pretend you're having a good time. Acting, in fact,
slow mowing it is probably the only way that they can make it. You don't have to sync it then. You have to try and sync it. But it was also just a little bit too light, and like you say, absolutely, the crowd was a little bit too thin. But
that's the thing, because it's like, it looks like it's been shot in the afternoon, doesn't it? It's like, I mean, you'd hope it would be like in the evening or something, and then a bit more sort of lights and things. But other than that, that's about it, really, isn't it? I mean, I think. Okay, so how are you going to score it out of 10, Will?
I'm going to be generous, I think, with this one, because I think, I think it deserves it. I think it really did play to the 80s thing. There was a lot of nice little details, a lot of stuff I didn't notice, which you did, obviously. Little kind of Easter eggs for the real fans of the slasher genre. But I just thought it had like it really held up the slasher genre and paid it a great tribute. And I'm going to say for the kind of film that it is, I'm going to say that it's a solid 7.
I'm going to join you on a 7. Yeah, this is definitely solid stuff. It's not a parody or anything like that, but it is a bit of a love letter in a sort of homage to the 80s style, with a bit of sort of self-awareness that the sort of Scream films sort of brought to the genre. Definitely worth checking out. So 2 7s for Pillow Party Massacre. Go check it out. Our short shot this week is Happy Mart. An undercover operative's cover is blown and must rely on a rookie for backup when her Happy Mart is besieged by assassins. Quite a short one. It's about 5 minutes. It's excuse me. It is directed by
Catherine Hughes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Catherine Hughes, who also did a film called Yellow Belt Fury, which covered a long time ago. Very good film. She's got a couple more on the way. I really like this. I think it's a lot of fun. It's it's not the best choreographed film or the best shot film, best shot choreography we've seen, but it is solid. It's got a decent sort of sense of humor. It's quite playful. I did like the bit where the the evil agent sort of kicks her guys in the face. Thought it was quite amusing. But yeah, I would like to see more of this. Basically, I thought what they've given us is a nice tease. I'd like to see how this develops with this new, this pairing of this duo. How do you get on with this, Steve?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's short, sweet, snappy. Yeah, a little bit rough around the edges, I think, some of the choreography. But it is shot well, and like you said, when the baddies turn up, she like kicks him in the face and puts a cigarette out on his neck. Yeah. I was just like, okay, fair enough. It made me laugh.
There's
it's enjoyable, yeah.
Yeah, I will shout out that there's a really good sort of tracking shot early on in this when this other rookie turns up and they jump over the behind the counter and then sort of sneak around the side, and it's all nice sort of tracking shot. I thought that was sort of very technically adept. Thought it was very good. The cinematography, the way the film's lit, it gives it that sort of comic book feel as well. I did also, the other bit I liked as well, when they come outside and one of the henchmen is sort of tapping away on the calculator and the other one's using a squeegee on the on the
wall.
Yeah, it just made me giggle a bit. So yeah, it was very good. Rich, how do you like this one?
Yeah, I liked it. I didn't like it as much as Yellow Belt Fury. I thought that film sort of had a bit more novelty, a bit more interesting that we have. Well, not that we haven't seen before, but like was quite playful with some of the ideas that weren't maybe as common as perhaps this sort of undercover agents kind of story is. But yeah, it's got that. I mean, there's a little bit of a Clerksy sort of feel to it because it's a convenience store setting, and tied in with that sort of a little bit of world building with this sort of secret organization and the covers and stuff, and they team up. And there was one of the heroines had a little bit of an Amy Johnston kind of presence about her, which I quite like. She was the one who was sort of working at the store, I believe. At the time, I can't remember, but it was a few weeks ago that I actually watched this because it came out a few weeks ago. I follow the Catherine Hughes on Vimeo, and it popped up in my feed, if I recall correctly. So I was very pleasantly surprised because I wasn't expecting something new from her so quickly. This it's not. I wouldn't say it's as good, but it's definitely another good example of her as a good quality, director of action comedy, martial arts stuff, working with people like Alfred Singh. I would really like to see more, and sort of a bigger project from her, whether that's like something that run still short but maybe like 20 minutes or something, or going for a full feature, which I'm sure she's she's trying to do. If she's not done already, I'm not sure if she's done any features. I'll be honest. I'm just
not directed. No.
No, I think
she's got 2 more shorts on the way.
2 more shorts on the way. Yeah,
we're also going to see her acting soon because we'll be covering the resurrection of Charles Manson towards the end of the month, and she's one of the actresses in that. So
I will say one of the films that IMDb lists as coming soon, I think is already available. I'm not sure if because IMDb is a bit funny sometimes, but it's one that's set in the West, and I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've got that on my watch list, unless it's a trailer. But I'm just gonna have a quick look just to see if I can see it. Yeah, no, it is. No, it was released because film shortage picked up on it, and yeah, it is available. So that is it's about 11 minutes, that one. So I definitely want to check. That's another. I don't know if it's actiony, but it's a sort of a Western revenge kind of story. Sounds a bit different to these two. So definitely want to check that out next.
Absolutely. Yes, so we don't score the shorts, but we do recommend you go check them out. Yeah, this one and Yellow Belt Fury we both enjoyed. Looking forward to sort of checking out more of her stuff. So click on the link in the footnotes below to watch this film. Our DTV throwback this week is Raise. 50 women have been kidnapped and forced to fight one another to the death. Sabrina vows to make it out alive and rescue her estranged daughter. This stars Zoe Bell, made in 2013. Our friend Mike Fury used this as the cover for his first volume of Life of Action, which is really cool. And it is a very different film to what you may imagine it to be. I think it has a very different flavor to it. It's much more sort of nihilistic than most martial arts action prison movies that we've sort of seen. I think part of that comes from the stakes involved. The one that they've been kidnapped and forced into this. So the people actually fighting, there's no sort of discerning who's a good guy, who's a bad guy, apart from sort of one bitch, basically. But for the most part, you're faced with 2 people having to fight each other, and we don't have any, we don't want either of them to die, sort of thing. It's this sort of really horrific sort of situation they find themselves in. They know that if they do die, then their loved ones are going to die as well. They made that quite clear. They even show them what happens to other people who lose and die in the ring. But yeah, it feels very different. Even though it's sort of directed by a guy and written by 3 guys, they do manage to sort of capture the difference between if this was an all-male cast, for example, it wouldn't have that level of emotion that we get from this, I don't think. It would be a lot more sort of macho and stoic and everything. But, this one, the characters talk to each other, they get into each other's heads. They don't want to fight each other. It's a lot different to, the main body of the film is a lot different to how you'd expect, I think. Steve, what do you make of Raise?
I kind of enjoyed it up to a point. Because it's basically just women kicking the shit out of each other for an hour and a half. Always a bonus. But I was very surprised with Doug Jones, because I'm normally a fan of his, and in this I just didn't buy him. I don't know if he's trying to camp it up too much or cheese it up or what, but I just didn't get him.
You didn't really get the feeling of him being the head of some megalomaniac empire sort of thing, which is what he's supposed to be.
Yeah. But aside from that, I mean, the fight scenes are just brutal as hell. Really are, and done really well. It's directed really well. But the thing that got me was the end. Really, really pissed me off, to be honest.
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's.
I hate it when they do things like that because I don't know. To me, it's just pointless. Then, you know, why tell that story if it ends like that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. Yeah. The only people who are going to tell that story are the executives in that company. You know, in that organization. It's like, oh, you remember when it almost all went tits up? You know.
Exactly,
it's basically the story, isn't it? That's how it'll be told. Not this sort of like act of heroism that, you know, and sort of breaking the system and all the rest of it. But yeah, that's basically what the story is.
Yeah, the one that got me as well is Rosario Dawson turning up in it. Just out of nowhere.
So I was watching it and I was thinking, that looks like Rosario Dawson. It wasn't until I'm actually checking the credits and I realised, oh, it actually was there.
Was that like right at the end?
No, it was about halfway through.
All right. Okay.
Just one of the girls that gets beat up. And I'm like, I'm sure that's her. And yeah, it was. I'm like,
I didn't notice.
Yeah, apparently she knew that had worked with the director, or you know, well, the director has also produced a whole bunch of films, so he might have worked in that capacity. But I think that's what it was intended as like a little cameo. But it was just like what? So I wasn't sure about it.
Yep. We also get Amy Johnson in there, Rich.
Yes, absolutely.
The girl fighting in the elevator.
Elevator, because they can't wait to get to the pit.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like they're just going to start before they get there. So, that was a pretty good scene. Not would like to have seen more from her because it's very much a one and done kind of fight scene. She doesn't get to be one of the characters really so much, but always good to see her.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you make this one overall?
I wish I'd seen it 10 years ago when it came out. I was like, oh my god! I was like, I loved it. It was really impressed with it. I wasn't sure what it was going to be. It starts out with this little bit of a bait and switch with a sort of a setting up a character who you think is going to be the lead, and then it sort of shifts it around a bit. Then it becomes more of an ensemble. There's a bit, they do this thing where it's sort of broken into chapters where they say X versus X, you know, with the names and stuff, which I thought was a bit, I didn't really think that worked at first, but as the film progressed, I think it had impact, you know, that the sort of it worked enough.
I agree.
If you didn't have it, it wouldn't have quite gelled.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, usually I'm quite dead set against that sort of thing. You know, when you get these chapters with the sort of like really obscure sort of titles and things. Sort of, but I think this is to the point. It made sense to have it in there.
Well, I was thinking with so many characters, you know, there was one particular moment where it shifts from one set of characters to the title card and then the other characters. And I was thinking, if I hadn't had that moment to state up the thing, that would have been a much more jarring shift to watching those characters. Although in general tournament film kind of terms, which essentially this is, that's fairly par for the course. I mean, another example would be something like Chi Kyung-chung's Underground, also called 12, the one with Mark Strange and stuff. So, but there's tons of these in various guises. But I thought it played out really well, and I thought the brutality of it was. I knew it was quite rough going in, but still, when you're watching it, I was like, yeah, this is very much more on a par with something like a Project Wolf Hunting or a Night Comes for Us, which I haven't seen, but I know is also quite brutal. But, you know, people are getting like properly eye gouged and you know, dragged down like walls and stuff, you know, by their faces or whatever. It's pretty rough in play, but I thought the cinematography was really good. I thought when you could see that the film had limited resources, very small. But I mean, the pit itself is very narrow. You don't have many shots of the villain's lair, as it were, you know, and the sort of the gathering, because this is another film with the kind of they're having a fight and they're being watched by cameras, and the sort of rich people are watching it, you know, sort of getting off on it and stuff. And you don't actually see many big crowd shots. I mean, you think back to like the Bloodsport days and stuff, you know, you didn't have to have a huge amount of money, but you'd still have big crowds of people waving money, you know. We don't get any of that really here. And also
I think that's part of the design, though. I mean, it does, you know, we get applause at the end of some of the fights, but you know, I think you know, it is meant to be a bit of a reveal that they're actually there on site.
They're actually there. Well, that's what I wasn't sure how they were trying to play that, whether it was an internet thing or whatever, because it's never fully divulged as to, you know, to the scope of it and stuff. And I guess that they're sort of leaving it up to your imagination. They're sort of setting it. It's almost set up like this kind of cult kind of thing, which also brought me to mind. I'd recently watched Get Out, and there's a little bit of that, because they say that it's like this thing that they've been doing for, you know, without going into details, but they've been doing it for a long time. Doug Jones, actually, I really liked. I thought this was a nice kind of, I've seen him in a lot of things, short films and stuff, as well as, you know, some of his bigger roles, which he, you know, where he's often in the makeup and everything. Here, where when you actually see him as himself, I haven't seen many roles where he's had, you know, a lot of scenes. There was another film actually he did with Zoe Bell and Heidi Moneymaker called No Touching, which is sort of a haunted house meets MMA kind of action thing, which is really interesting. But he has like a little cameo in that, and that's kind of the way I was. If Doug Jones is turning up in something, it's usually a cameo from what I've seen. But in this, he's kind of meaty role and he's playing like he's playing with Sherilyn Fenn. She's like his playing his wife, and they play really well together. I thought, you know, they don't fit, but at the same time they do fit. They're a really odd couple. You know, they're both kind of deranged and stuff, and I just thought it worked quite well.
I do like Sherilyn Fenn. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, Twin Peaks is a long time ago. She's you know, aged a bit, but she's turned up in some interesting films. Like there's a killer polar bear movie called Maneater, which I really like. She turns up in that, and she's been in the TV series SWAT for a few series as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, she's quite good in that as well. So yeah, she you know, she's made a bit of a resurgence sort of the last few years. It's really cool.
Going back to just want to go back to the sort of setup and the you know, the fact that it's basically a women in prison fight movie, you know, a variation thereof. And I think in other hands or in previous generations or whatever, that would have been a much sleazier proposition. It would have been much more catfighty and, you know,
did you read the review on IMDb? I was flicking through the reviews, and one of them goes, "To be honest, I only put this on because I was expecting to see some tits." You know, it's like, but then he sort of like raves about the film. You know, it's like, but yeah, as you say, there is that kind of expectation. You know,
well, there are a lot of these sort of things. You know, not too long ago. Yeah, the Caged Heat sort of Lloyd Simandl movie. He was churning them out. You know, get lots of shots of women sort of walking around in their underwear and stuff like that. There's none of that here. I mean, they wear like figure hugging white vests, but you know, there's nothing really more than that. No. It's quite respectful of its characters, I think, really. And I did like Zoe Bell in it, but I do really want to flag up Rebecca Marshall as Phoebe, who I think is a great sort of villain amongst the group. I thought she did a great performance. She was really having you could tell she was having a great time getting to be that character rather than one of the sort of more scared ones and stuff. And there's a sort of a big build up to like a big fight with her and stuff, which by the way, the fights are coordinated by Sam Hargrave. Right. Which I'll be honest, I haven't read Mike Fury's book, but I should imagine he goes into some depth if he's seen the film and stuff to talk about, you know, the stuff that, because I know I think he's spoken with Sam Hargrave as well. He's probably, that's all I presume that's all sort of detailed in the book. And just again, I really wish I'd seen it so long ago, because I think it is definitely one of the best and it's quite, in its own way, quite distinctive from the other film. I think the title put me off. You know, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, and also Zoe Bell as a lead, I was always a bit unsure of. Funnily enough, the sort of one of the reasons I wanted to watch this film now, although I have sort of been aware of it for a long time, is I watched the documentary Stunt Women: The Untold Hollywood Story, and I double billed that with a film that was made about 15 years earlier called Double Dare. And in Double Dare, half of the narrative is following Zoe Bell's career to, you know, her, you know, going from Xena Warrior Princess to, you know, having a bit of a lag to go into Hollywood, sort of going back home, going back to Hollywood, meeting Quentin Tarantino, and, you know, sort of the rest is history kind of thing. So you're seeing sort of the start of the next part of her career in that documentary, and then like what, you know, 10 years later or whatever it was, or less than that, she's getting to do leading roles, and she's actually done a second one with this same film's director called Camino, which I've also just
really good.
I've just put that on my watch list on Plex.
So a while ago, it is a very good film.
Which also looks like a bit unusual because it's like a jungle kind of set story, which I'm not really sure what to expect from it. But I think, you know, I've not seen anything by this director before, so I'm really keen to check that out. And so I think that the cast, you know, all the supporting players and that were really good. I mean, there was lots of people in there like Melissa LeBog and Tara Macken, both who've worked on shorts and features. Very good. They were also in the in that Stunt Women documentary as well, which is also very well worth seeking out. So yeah, I'm just going to try and go from here and sort of continue down that sort of Zoe Bell kind of journey, and see what she's got to offer as a lead, because I think there's not much that's expected of her in this one, but I think, you know, there's some scenes that are quite challenging for someone who's not come from an acting background, and I think she did quite well. And I know she'd had some experience on things like Death Proof in supporting roles and that, but I think she's, you know, we've seen her in we saw her in Pipe, which also I think shares some stunt people with this film, and we quite liked that. I think she is sort of shaping up to be quite, you know, somebody definitely reliable as a sort of a leading sort of action presence, but not constrained to action. She's quite, she'll push herself into sort of different areas and that, which I really like.
She turns up in Malignant as well.
She's got a supporting turn in that. Funnily enough, actually, that's that was James Wan, and I don't know if Lee Whannell was involved, but obviously they did Saw together. Actually, Lee Whannell has like a cameo in Raise as like a guard. So I think there's like a connection between all those guys. They maybe work together. But yeah, she had a nice little role in the fantastic police station sequence in Malignant, which is brilliant, always great. And obviously she always turns up in other Tarantino stuff as well.
Just want to mention Bruce Thomas, who plays Kurtz, the head guard. I thought he was very good.
He was great, wasn't he?
Really
there was some really interesting stuff going on with him, especially towards the end. The camera kind of lingers on him, and you're like, what's the film trying to tell us there? It's like he's like, no, I don't belong on this side, you know, kind of thing. It's like, no, I'm going back, and then there's consequences for that.
Yeah, I thought he was just sort of looking at the door, thinking the boss should have come out by now, sort of thing, you know. But yeah.
I love the title card. You know, that the last title card that comes up. Versus. It's like, I was like, yes, that's a great. I was like, really enjoyed it. I was like, it's a really great. It's great until, like you say, that sort of downbeat part of the ending, but before that, it's sort of like quite triumphant.
The other little bit I did like is we get this sort of little reveal, sort of a few little flashback scenes. There's a particular character who's integral in abducting these women, and you know, we see that he's befriended a number of them, and been their sort of downfall. And it did remind me that there's a film again, it's a film I really like. I got a feeling you guys will hate, called Bound to Vengeance, which does a similar thing.
Yeah.
It's a very good film, and again, it's about, you know, these women have been abducted by this cult or this sort of organization, and discovering exactly how big this organization is, and then who's responsible for her, you know, being sort of held captive in the first place. It has that sort of feel to it, which
yeah.
I really like.
Well, that was another thing that I thought was very very similar to Get Out, to bring that up again. You know, there's a sort of there's a similarity in that same kind of setup and what happens. And also another film that came up to me was, I know it's in a completely different kind of vein, but Ready or Not, where, you know, one of the characters sort of goes into this situation. It ends up being this grand sort of scheme by this, you know, like long, you know, wealthy, you know, sort of empire, or not the right word, but you know what I'm saying, like this lineage kind of thing of like they've been doing this stuff, and it's what you have been chosen to this thing. It's like, except in this case, it's many people have been chosen, but they're looking for one. But the I would say the IMDb is actually a bit misleading, because they say 50 women have been. Actually, the film mentions that, but at the point the story has been joined, the number of women is actually much less. So they're sort of making it sound it's not battle royale or anything to that scale. We join a very small group. Actually reminded me of things like the do you remember the one that we watched recently about the sort of college sort of test group, and they sort of treat people like the animals?
Yes. What was that called? I was trying to remember the name of it.
Like Dogs, I think it was called.
Like Dogs, that was it.
Yeah, that was another sort of thing that came to mind, of a film that was working within quite some pretty strict constraints, but sort of worked with some big ideas and stuff within it. And you know, the interplay with the characters, and who's being genuine, who's what's truth, what's a lie, you know, and who do you trust, who's the hero, who's the villain, you know, is anyone good in this situation? There's a lot going on. I can't rate this film enough, really. I think it was a really pleasant surprise. Wish I'd seen it years ago. Highly recommended, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. This has been a bit of a blind spot for us, and we're glad to sort of clear that up. You can tell we enjoyed it, because we've been talking about it for God knows how long now. This is available on Amazon Prime or Freevee.
Freevee.
So yeah, not too many adverts, I must admit.
Oh God, I found the adverts really annoying. It was like
they are very ill-timed. Yeah, they're very ill-timed, unfortunately. But there you go. Yes, we don't.
I seriously think that if you're a Prime subscriber like I am at the moment, they should really just knock the adverts out. I think that's they should just make that a benefit, because half the time there are no adverts anyway. It's just an ident or something. So that's an aside.
Yeah, they are badly timed. You know, it's a midway through a fight or something. It's a bit ridiculous. But there you go. We don't score our throwbacks, but we do recommend you go check them out. Go find it on Amazon. That is the end of this week's show. So thanks to Rich and Steve for going through these films with us.
It was a pleasure.
Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter at the DTV Digest. Also check out the Short Shots, where Rich puts a link to a new short every evening around about 8 o'clock. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time.
Thank you for listening to the DTV Digest. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and tune in again next time.